Welcome to our today's Coffee and Consulting at your desk. My name is Friederike Ruch, and I hope you had a nice weekend and started well this morning. And I wish you a great and interesting week to go. Our today's topic is about immigration in Switzerland and the labor market controls regarding posted workers or business travelers, which we realized have increased dramatically and are still challenging us on a daily basis. And we would like just to share a bit of our information and about the know-how we have already with it, and maybe you have also the one or the other question to it. So in case you do have questions, please put them down in the right-hand box you see there about questions. Any question you will write during the presentation, I will, after the presentation, answer to you. Otherwise, you still have the chance to send us an email, and then we will answer the questions afterwards. I don't know how many experience you have with these labor market controls already. Before we start, what the labor market control is really, we look at the legal requirements of posted worker, and that is basically then also what the labor market control is reviewing. So one thing is that you need to check if you send someone to Switzerland, whether he needs a work permit or not. In case it is work the employee is performing, then either the notification has to be done or a work permit has to be requested. In addition, and that is sometimes that we see this gets forget, which is the additional approval we need for night work or working on a Saturday or Sunday or on a bank holiday. The interesting part is that or the challenging part, better to say, in Switzerland is that not each canton is looking at the same definition of night work or whether an additional approval is required for working on a Saturday or Sunday. As well, there's also, which comes into that regulation, that not each sector is looked at that in the same way. So you need to check that each time in case somebody really wants to work, and night work is usually 10 p.m. to 6 in the morning, or on Saturday or Sunday or bank holidays. Check with the cantonal authority whether there is something required in addition to the work permit or notification. If we send somebody to Switzerland, then yes, the salary level needs to be at the same level as a Swiss employee. We need to consider the maximum work hours we have, all the labor law conditions, at least the mandatory ones, if we only send people for a specific or a short period to Switzerland. And then in regard to Social Security contributions, the posted worker or business traveler needs to have either the A1 or the certificate of coverage with him or her, or in case there's no treaty and there's none of either of these documents, then there needs to be the requirement of paying Social Security contributions in Switzerland. In addition, there's then also the tax implication. You need to clarify with the tax authority whether the Swiss tax at source is deductible. Please keep in mind that even you only request a notification or a work permit for a very short time, still there is an increase of the communication between the labor market authority, who issues then the the immigration document, as well as then with the tax at source authority, and they start to have an increase of communication, and they then share as well all the approvals they issue the labor market authority, and then based on that, the tax authority then communicates or starts to request additional information of the individual to see whether tax at source is applicable. The last part we see, and that is also something which is a bit in the back and is also not relevant for everybody, the requirement of the Swiss deposit. This is only in certain sectors a requirement, and this is also something the authority are looking more and more into it, and are also then sanction it in case somebody is not complying. So now we know what the legal requirements are. Then let's move on and see what the labor market control is about. There are two different scenarios we have seen in practice. It's either that the labor market authority will directly control at the work location, and the work location in Switzerland can be, or is usually either at an affiliated company where the employee is posted, or at the client site. And then if it's at the work location in Switzerland, then the employee gets interrogated directly, and usually there is not allowed to be anybody else involved. So it's just that the employee is questioned usually about the salary, about the work hours, what he's doing, and based on that, the auditors who will then go, or the reviewer are then determining whether everything is correct or not. Sometimes they also request then additional information sent by mail, and sometimes they are okay with the interrogation and then everything is good. Usually also the employee has to show them then the A1 or the certificate of coverage. This is something the authority is quite keen on, and if the labor market controller doesn't see it, or the employee is not able to show it, they can then make the employee stop to work and send him home, and only make the employee start again as soon as he can provide the A1 or the certificate of coverage. We also see that not in all cantons the controls are done in the same way, as well as the intensity is not always the same. The French-speaking cantons, as well as the Italian-speaking cantons, are more like controlling at the work location, whereas the other cantons are doing it more in writing. And what you need to know about the control in writing is that the request the labor market controller is sent to the employer abroad. And what we have seen a couple of times in practice, that the request has been sent to the company or the legal entity abroad where the posted worker is employed with. And the problem is that the request is then either in German if it's the German-speaking part of Switzerland, in French if it's the French part, in Italian if it's the Italian part. And that the employer abroad is not really reacting to it, or is just not realizing that it is important and they have to answer it. And then usually there will be a reminder sent from the labor market control office, and if that also is not answered, then they go through the embassy and the consulate, and that is usually not then the best way. Also, you need to keep in mind that in case you're not answering the request, there are then fines, so they sanction that as well. We will look at the sanctions in the last part. What will be reviewed in the labor market control? It is whether the correct work permit or notification, whether the authorization for Saturday, Sunday, or night work has been received as the employee is working, the salary level to avoid any kind of salary dumping, work hours. This is sometimes a bit tricky because there is a maximum of work hours. Somebody can only work. And we had a couple of cases where the employees very honestly answered the that question, and then it turned out that they said they worked every day 13 or 14 hours, which then led to a kind of long discussion with the authority why they answered in that way, and that this definitely is not being compliant in regard of the work hours in Switzerland. They see, but that is, I would say, just as a second part, they really look into that the mandatory labor law provisions are considered. They are looking more in regard to the Social Security. As said, we had a couple of cases where people then had to stop to work because they were not able to show them the A1 certificate. And they made the people stop working until they have received it. And if you look at the moment, how long it sometimes takes to get an A1, then this definitely means you better see that you get for everybody who will work in Switzerland at least the A1 or request it at the same time point you request the work permit as well, so that they hopefully have it done in time, or at least they have it done quickly after they have to work in Switzerland. The required documents they usually look at or want to see is basically in regard to the salary, the bank statements or pay slips. And we also had a couple of cases where the Swiss authority in the end requested the bank statements from the employer abroad, showing about the payment to the employee, as well as the bank statement from the employee that he really has received the salary. The authority is usually then looking at it in case there is a difference between the salary the employee received or is usually receiving and the Swiss salary level, and they would like to see that really the employee has received the difference. Now, it is not really required that the employee receives in the same month in which he has worked in Switzerland, that he receives in the same month as well the additional payment, but you need to have a kind of guideline at least in your backhand to show what the procedure is and how the process is. And then the authority is also okay. We had a case where we then had to send in, as soon as the payment had been made, we had to send in the proof, because one client had the policy that they only will make these additional payments every quarter. So in case somebody was working in February, for example, then only in April the payment has been made for the quarter January to March. This is just to avoid a bit of administration. Timesheets, this is something the authority is also looking into it, and there then the individual has to put down the number of hours he worked while being in Switzerland, and usually the employee has to sign it as well as the employer has to sign it. The A1 or the COC we already talked about. What you also need to know is usually in these labor market control, they ask then about a copy of the employment contract or assignment contract, if that is available. In some cantons, they really then are quite strict and ask then also for the translation to the language which is spoken in the canton. What we realized, it depends a bit on the person doing that labor market control, as well as what kind of information and how the information was provided to them. Sometimes they are also then okay if the contract is just in English and they accept it, but there's no guarantee to it. Usually, you have to basically get it translated to the language which is spoken in the canton. What we advise clients is that they should wait for the translation. They should not now just translate it to German, French, or Italian. Or, for example, if somebody is working in all three areas in Switzerland, they shouldn't translate it into all these languages, because usually what you can do is then in the end to get an express translation, which costs a bit more, but you don't have the cost upfront. And the labor market control wants to see as well, in case the assignment or the work is performed at the client side, they would like to see a copy of the project agreement. This is mainly for people who are working in Switzerland just on the notification, because when you do the notification of an employee, then you never attach any kind of documents like the project agreement or employment contract or assignment contract or so on. So that's why if there is a notification then usually they ask at least for the last two items. Whereas if you have, for example, requested a 120 days work permit, then usually they only ask for the first three items listed down on that page. This is about the required documents you need to show then. There is the possibility that the labor market controller is requesting further information or additional information, but that is then really a case-by-case decision. There is no legal provision which prohibits the controller to request anything. It's just that the law says it has to be in regard to the assignment, and it has to be connected with the task to see that the posted worker or the business traveler is compliant with law. Now, the most important part as well, in addition to now as we know what we have to do and what we need to be prepared of, is about the sanctions. We have realized and seen that the labor market controllers are quite strict, and they sanction really sometimes really quite harshly as well. What you also need to see is that there are cantonal differences. However, the fines listed down and the sanctions listed down are based on federal law, but there is the possibility if a canton or if a labor market controller sees a company never really being compliant, never answering any questions or so on, that the financial fines are getting even higher above these 30,000 Swiss francs listed down here. There are different ways of sanctions. One is there's that financial fines or the financial fines that can happen in case you do a notification, but you do it too late, like not considering the 8 days pre-advance waiting period, or you do the notification for the wrong work location, for example, or you just don't do any notification and also no work or do not request any work permit at all. Then usually the first time you get a reminder, and starting from the next time or from the next time you did it wrong, you get then a financial fine. There again, the fine will be not done for the Swiss entity or the Swiss affiliated company or for the Swiss client here. The fine or the authority will fine the employer abroad. So it will be also sent to the employer abroad, even if you have somebody here in Switzerland dealing with all the immigration work or with everything in regard to that assignment to Switzerland. You see then also at the next point, if you are non-compliant with the salary, then there are higher fines, as well as there is no first reminder if you do it wrong. It's then just if you are not compliant with it, you get the financial fine. And what is sanctioned harder is in regard to if you're not answering any requests of the labor market control or not showing all the documents or falsifying the documents, then the fines are up for a blocking of up to 24 months. You see as well below here the link where you can look at, you see there blacklisted company or companies which are blocked, and you see as well that they are not just only small companies, some of them are quite big. Now, it is true that the Swiss immigration and as well as all the matters regarding posting workers to Switzerland or business travelers are not that easy. Always keeping in mind that people sometimes need to be quite quickly here in Switzerland, but on the other hand, the work permit process or notification process and everything else takes a bit more time than just a day. So we know, or everybody knows, that you need to somehow handle those challenges, and we are just here to show you what you need to know and where you have to look at and see that there will be no sanctions in your situations. I hope you have enjoyed the last couple of minutes and the outline, and there was the one or the other thing you maybe did not know, or you just know now that you know everything. I would have now time for any questions from your side. Let me quickly see. We do have one question, and the question is, let me quickly see. This is necessary to have the form as of productive working day 1, correct? I assume you mean the A1, and yes, this is correct. You do need to have the A1 or the certificate of coverage starting from the first day. Internally, our company is looking for easy solutions, e.g., for example, to only deliver an A1 if somebody works for more than 3 productive days in Switzerland. This would not be correct. Yes, that is true. in case there's a labor market control, you do need it from the first day and not only from the third day. Now, looking at the procedures in a couple of countries, then it's not that easy sometimes to get these A1s, and sometimes you can only get it then for exactly that period somebody is working in Switzerland. Like if somebody will be coming here for 5 days, then you only get the A1 for those 5 days. Now here in Switzerland, we are, I would say, a bit better off, or have a bit of more possibilities. We are able to get an A1, for example, if we say somebody's working in various EU countries, then we are able to get an A1 even for 1 year or 2 years. So that also then is a bit better or easier than the administration. But I understand that that is not as easy as it was. And there is another question. Let me see. Unfortunately, I can't see the question now. We have to answer it later on because technically I'm not able to see at the moment the question. So my apologies for it. I will get back to you after the coffee and consulting event and send you the answer by email. As said, I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you a great week, and hopefully we see us to one of our next events. Thank you and have a great day.